Good afternoon, Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast, episode number 83. We've got a special guest that's going to be joining us today, Mr. Scott Reib, America's legal coach. As you know, the podcast is brought to you as always by the Binge podcast network. OnABinge.com is the move that you need to make. We got a great lineup, nothing but buckets, many other shows joining, and of course the Startup Life by my great dear friend and brother, Mr. Dominic Lawson of Owls LLC. Brooks Brothers Consulting.com is the move that you need to make if you're looking for support for your business, and even in working with your banker. If your banker has some issues or is needing some support, Brooks Brothers Consulting is there. We're an organizational development firm. Today is Tuesday, February the 26th of 2019. Again, this is episode number 83 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron. Let's get busy.
What we do here is go back.
All right. So yes, indeed. Thank you so much for joining. We're coming on an unusual day on a Tuesday, being live. It's just after 1:00 Central Time, and I was traveling last week in Michigan, the great state of Michigan. Had a great time, very progressive meetings going on up there. And so now I'm back, and we're going to be coming to you this week with actually 2 episodes. And today's guest is new to the podcast, but he's certainly not new to what he does. And so I want to go ahead and introduce Mr. Scott Reib, America's legal coach. And I'm so excited to have him as part of episode 83 on the Minding Your Business podcast here with us on Tuesday, February the 26th. So, Scott, are you there?
I'm here, Ron. Glad to be here.
Yep. Awesome. And so we've got a live audience here with us, as well as those that are going to be listening on the recorded podcast. And so they're anxious to hear from you. And we're so glad that you took time, Scott. We know that you're extremely busy in what you do. And for you to take time for a little old us is we definitely appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yep, absolutely. So, Scott, let's just start off, because you have a very unique background in just kind of reading about your pathway to where you are today, your years of experience in the field, and the many businesses that you've had the opportunity to support and help edify. And so, how did you get into what you do? I mean, did you always know you're going to be in law, or is this something that came at a certain point, or kind of tell us your story there?
Sure. No, I didn't always want to be a lawyer. When I was younger, I was intrigued by it. I can remember in middle school, career day, a lawyer coming through and being pretty impressed with that. But then as I got older, got into college, I really loved marketing. And still do. And so graduated from college in 91, wanted to go out and get marketing jobs. And in 91, the economy was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And everyone thought marketing jobs were selling copiers. That wasn't marketing, that was sales.
Right.
So I kept looking for jobs, couldn't really find one. I tried several things, tried to sell life insurance, which if anyone in the audience is doing that, God bless you. That is a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
But once it's a survival game. If you can survive, you can thrive. I just wasn't able to do it. Didn't have the right list for it and couldn't hang in. So I ended up being an independent authorized agent for a major telecom company selling phone systems.
Oh, wow.
And aftermarket equipment. And so I had my own business. I was 23 and started making what I thought was kind of real money. And the way I did it was I discovered in their computer system a way to generate some revenue that they didn't really existed. You know, when you buy a phone, you buy any piece of equipment now, wherever you are, they always offer you an extended warranty.
Right.
Well, it was no different back in the 90s. If you're buying a phone system for your business, you would always buy an extended warranty. Well, the 4 years would run on those, and then as they're expiring, I found in the computer system where I could have it print out not only just a list of everyone that was expiring, but generate new contracts for those people that I could then send out in the mail.
Oh, wow.
And when I did that, over 25% of them came back immediately signed. And then as I started dialing and calling them, you know, another 60% would come in, and a few didn't renew. But I created this mailbox money and they were paying me on the annual the annual premium, so that if it was a 4-year deal, they would lump up the whole 4 years of premium and pay me my commission percentage.
Oh, wow.
So it was a great deal for me, and I got so busy setting up systems and doing that I kind of wasn't spending a lot of time selling the phone equipment. We got a new general manager at the place where I had my contract, and they decided that they liked that revenue I was creating, but they did not want to pay me a commission.
Oh,
so
wow.
they took it away from me, gave it to an in-house minimum wage employee. Even though I had a contract, the contract wasn't as good as I thought it was, and it was a company that was too big really for me to fight. And so at that point, I decided I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't want to be in that situation again. So I started applying for law school. And
wow.
so, yeah, and so I went. So that's how I ended up at law school to kind of learn things so that I wouldn't make uneducated decisions again in business.
Wow. And that's very interesting, Scott, because a lot of times when you come across attorneys, no matter what, kind of area of expertise they have, most have never been business owners prior to getting into law. So I think that gives a very unique perspective and experience from your end. How old were you when you went into law school?
I was 24. I turned 25 I started in August and turned 25 in November. So
gotcha.
24.
Gotcha. So you're still very young, but now you got this business experience, right? And now it motivates you to go and be able to help support business owners. And so obviously you come out of law school. Did you know you're going to get into kind of business law, or did you have another area of expertise maybe at first that you were interested in? Or
I just wanted a job at that point. After 3 years of I was married, and was married at the time.
Okay.
Living on an Oklahoma teacher's salary of $714 every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
We were ready for some income. It was really a great 3 years, but we were kind of ready for to make some money. So it was, where could I get a job?
Right.
And so I ended up doing really high level corporate litigation in North Texas.
Okay.
And representing really big brand names in intellectual property disputes and things in federal courts. And so I was on the phone with engineers and really high level stuff, and just bored to death.
I could imagine.
I was not helping anybody.
Right.
I wanted to help people, and I wasn't helping anybody. I was making money,
right?
But it just wasn't very fulfilling. And so I transitioned from that. One of the lawyers in the firm left, and he had a big caseload of personal injury cases, actually, and those fell to me as the new guy. And so I started working those and learned through those how to really litigate cases and how to negotiate and resolve cases that would help individuals. And I really liked that because I was getting paid for delivering value. I wasn't getting paid by the hour. I had to actually produce something to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. And so as I did that, I started building some systems for that. Was pulled into a couple other law firms that asked me to come join them. I basically, other than my first year as a lawyer, have always been some sort of a equity holder in the law firms. But there has been some transition, And then everyone's familiar with tort reform, and that came through Texas back in the early 2000s.
Yep, I remember.
And I could see the handwriting on the wall that things were going to change in that area, and I tried to convince my then partners to diversify, and because I had other experiences that we could use, and they weren't interested, so I did it anyway, and eventually became really busy with that when they didn't want to split the money different or help me. I had to go my own way. So in 2005, about 14 years ago this week, actually, I started Reib Law.
Okay, excellent. So you get to Reib Law, right? And so how does that start off? I mean, do you have kind of a book of business there, Scott, that you're kind of jumping on, or are you cold calling, kind of smiling and dialing? What's kind of your process there?
I kind of had some business. When I started diversifying at the other firm, I picked up some family litigation, which is no fun, but there's tons of it. I actually, in the way I got that work was I did direct response advertising and was offering $500 divorces.
Oh, really?
And kind of how that happened was we were getting called at the office, and we weren't a divorce firm, for people that were saying that they had, they're at the end of the road, and I'm not a proponent of divorce at all.
Sure.
But they're at the end of the road. They had an agreement, and lawyers were wanting to charge them $2,000 or $3,000 to do that divorce.
Right.
And they basically had splitting. It was just pots and pans divorces. Maybe they had kids, but they had an agreement for the kids what they were going to do, and it was robbery. And so on one of those phone calls, I said, "Well, I've done a divorce before. I can help you," and I did it, and it was very simple. And so then I thought, well, if all these people are calling, I wonder if there's a market. So I tested it and started running direct response ads.
Yeah.
And suddenly I had 25, 30 at a time of these divorces. So that was about a year before I left that firm. When I left, some of those were coming back and saying, okay, well, we need to make a new agreement because this isn't working. So we need to modify our child support or our custody or whatever.
Right.
And so then those became then they became higher paying clients because the uncontested divorce was kind of a lost leader. And then once they came in, then it was real money, and that's about the time I was leaving and starting my own. So now I had this book of business, which wasn't what I wanted to do, but it allowed me to keep the doors open. In fact, funny story, so I started in February, and we were so busy trying to keep up with the work that we had and that was coming in that I forgot to bill my clients.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And at some point, the person doing my book said, "Hey, you need to get some money coming in, so you probably should send out bills." And I'm like, "Well, okay. I don't really know how to do that."
Yeah.
So what we did was my best friend. I didn't have software to do it other than Excel. So my best friend came up with me to my law firm and helped me, and we worked from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. and we created invoices in Excel. And then I invoiced them, and this was on April 15th of 2005. I can remember because it was tax day.
Yeah.
And we sent out the invoices, and then everyone paid. It was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I got so busy working that I forgot. I forgot to bill them.
Right. And Scott Reib is our guest today with Reib Law, America's legal coach, here on the Mind Your Business podcast. And so, that's hilarious given, Scott, you got a very vast marketing background and business background, but you got so excited there driving business that you forgot to do the big part of it, which is obviously collect the money. So that's hilarious. So as we get into, so you're going along and, now, Scott, how do you transition to the point that you're working with business owners?
So when I started this firm, I was in kind of a little office suite area. I had a 2-room office, and then there were some other small business owners around me, and they would wander over occasionally, and we would sit and drink coffee and talk, and they would ask me questions, and they would kind of say, well, it'd sure be nice if I didn't have to pay you by the hour. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be really great, but that's how lawyers work, so I don't know how we'd fix that.
Right.
And so this was 2005, 2006. It just kind of kept bugging me that, there's got to be a better way. And then I also had this problem of we would litigate something for a commercial business client. We'd win. And at the end, they still weren't happy because it cost so much money that they wouldn't call me before they'd make their next mistake, right?
Right.
So then we'd hear from them again when their house was on fire, and they'd be saying, okay, Scott, put this fire out.
Yeah.
And we could usually do it. But again, it was real expensive, and they weren't happy, and so they didn't call me anymore. So I actually decided I wanted to try to develop a new model, and so I hired a business coach. It took me a couple tries to get to the right coach, but I ended up with a business coach, Clay Clark out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. His company now is Thrive 15, I think, but he a really young guy compared to me, but super successful. One of these guys that at 16 has his own business.
Oh, wow.
He was like, just one of these savant guys. And when I told him kind of the problem I saw in the marketplace and that I needed someone to help me put together a program to solve it, he understood my vision. And then, so over about an 18-month period, he helped me develop what we call the access plan. And we've turned the whole legal model on its head so that we now had to provide value in an efficient way to be profitable. And the clients had a controlled fixed cost so that they didn't have to worry about every time they called us getting a bill. And so the result from that was that my clients now like to talk to me. They call me, text me, email me all the time. And so they're able to make better decisions than before. They're still not always the right decisions because I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
But but they at least have the right information in real time to make those decisions. And it turns out it's profitable for me as well.
Yeah, and so speak on the profitability part, because that's intriguing me, because my initial thought of it, Scott, would be, I'm thinking, how is that profitable to Scott? Because if, again, without knowing the exact amount, but if I'm paying you X amount per month, and then I do something crazy or stupid or something comes up that impacts me where I need your help, and obviously normally that might be a certain dollar amount, that of cost, where in the past I would pay you this lump sum that's based on per hour usage of your time and expertise. Now I'm getting access to you, but at like you say, that fixed amount. So how did that work for you in terms of, the profitability side? Well,
and just kind of for round numbers, let's say my average client right now is paying me paying me $485 a month, just so the listeners kind of have an idea of kind of the numbers we're talking about.
Sure.
Right, and so they get a 30-minute phone call with a Reeb associate every month. We call it a check-in call, so we're focused on their business and their business only for 30 minutes every month. And then we have the on-the-fly calls. We do some document reviews, create some contracts, set up some LLCs. It's all stuff that's done with me supervising it by other what I would call paraprofessionals,
sure,
and some lawyers, right? So I have to control that cost. So I have to make sure I'm paying them at a rate that makes sense for these plans, which I was able to do, and we worked out the business model. Let's say I can pay a contract lawyer $35 an hour.
Okay.
And so if you're an Access client and you're paying me $500 a month to help you solve your problems, so we can do 10 hours of legal services for you if I use this contract lawyer at $35 an hour.
Right.
And still not touch the $500.
Got you. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So now I'm having to work like everyone else in business and figure out what is the cost of goods sold, and come up with a gross profit and then work to a net profit, instead of just, I'm going to charge you $500 an hour. I probably could make more money doing it by the hour.
Sure.
But I don't like it. I think it puts me in opposition to my client because everyone knows their lawyers are in control of the situation.
Sure.
I had a partner one time that said, I don't care if I control the rate or the time, either way, I'm going to get what I want.
Right.
Right. It's
Right.
unfortunate, but true.
Yeah.
And so even an ethical, good-intentioned lawyer knows in the back of their mind that the longer they spend, if they're working by the hour, the more they make. And so even if they're not doing that, the client is suspicious that that could be happening. And so every bill gets scrutinized that way. And so that's not what you, if you have a trusted advisor, even a fiduciary, that you're suspicious of how they're spending the time on, it's just not right. There's a conflict there. And so I've erased that conflict. So now everyone likes me. They're using the system, so they're actually getting better information. They're making better decisions. And guess what? There's things that aren't included in the plan. So I have upsells that allow us to make more money. And they still like me because they get a discount if they're in the program. And it's all flat fees. There's still no hourly. So it just works. And the trick, like any other business then, was learning how to scale it. And so now we're in year 6, and so we're kind of to that point where it's starting to scale. I had to figure out what is the team that's needed to support it, and we've done that. And now it's working. It's all based on systems and working like a machine.
Yeah, and Scott, you mentioned earlier, and something that really stood out as you were explaining that was the relationship between you and the client and how that evolves when you're able to help them better budget, utilizing you as a resource. And so that then keeps them from being so reactive, and they can be a little bit more proactive with you, which, obviously that helps you, that helps them. I think it's a win-win all the way around. Go ahead.
Yeah, most business owners don't spend 30 minutes a year thinking about or talking about the legal aspects of their business.
True.
And our clients spend 6 hours a year.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that makes, to me, that's a huge difference. I wish I had that, quite frankly, because as the MYB Nation here knows, I haven't been shy about sharing how I either attempted to skirt having legal support in some of my earlier businesses that came back to bite me in the ASS really hard, or I didn't necessarily value the advice that I was getting. And so either one of those, can put you in a really bad bind. And so I love, the kind of perspective of that access plan. And so, Scott, a lot of what you've talked about, and, I know over the years is, and I love that term, shatterproof, when you talk about your business. And again, this is something that I didn't do well at all, and mainly because I didn't have the money, right? So I looked at, and a lot of business owners start out, they feel like they don't have the budget. I can't afford an attorney. So, maybe I'll dibble and dab on Google, right? So they hired Google as their attorney. Or they hire their best buddy, that, has some nice memes on social media. Or they may dibble and dab a little bit in LegalZoom or something like that. So can you kind of speak to that piece of the importance of, having legal representation and legal advice in your business? Because what you've done is made it affordable, I think, for a lot of people. And I think, some people traditionally have skirted or offset or not really valued, like I once did, having that legal support and then having it consistently. So it's not just, when the monsoon comes, now I call you.
That's right. It's the wrong time to be buying plywood. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that, Ron.
Yeah.
The 5 strategies have given me a platform to where I can show business owners at a really low cost, right? Sure. So I had a business owner in yesterday, actually. He's in the launch phase of a service-based business. He's got a handful of clients. Has some positive cash flow, but not much. And so he's looking at the access plan and saying, I really want that, but I don't think I can afford it. And so when you look at the cost, like I said, if the average is, let's say, $500 a month, and it's actually a little lower than that. So for less than $6,000 a year, You can have this kind of legal support while you're starting a business. If you don't have that $6,000, you're undercapitalized, and if you don't make that step of pulling in the professional, it'd be like going to not going to the dentist and just doing your own teeth work, or
right.
Man, I've got something wrong with my brain, I'm going to do the surgery because I want to save a little money.
Right.
If it's serious, if it's really a business, if it's not a hobby, and there's a difference. If it's a hobby, okay, that's fine. Just make sure you're not causing yourself any liability with it. But I get it. But if it's a business and this is what's going to support your family, then you want to make sure that you're building it on a solid foundation. Right?
Definitely.
That's actually shatterproof strategy number one, is that you have to build your business on a solid foundation. It's not the business idea. It's not the business owner. It's you have to have a legal entity to house your operation.
Yes.
That's to separate it from you the person. If you don't do that, then you're not on a solid foundation. Can you come back later and jack that thing up and put one under it? Sure. You can do that.
Sure.
That's not the best way. Right? The best way is to go ahead and invest now and make sure that you've got that foundation. And some people can't see the access plan yet, and so we offer flat fees for that. And our flat fee plans are a little higher than the rest of the market, truthfully, because we put a lot more value into it.
Sure.
For instance, if you wanted to get started an LLC and you come to us to do it, you could shop around and probably find people that could do it for half of what I would do it. But you don't get me. That's one thing.
Right.
And you don't get all the documents that you really need to do an LLC. There's a lot of people that are ripping you off out there because they tell you you've got everything you need, but you don't. And then we don't send any business owner out with an LLC without making sure they know how to use it. Right? They're setting them out with this new legal thing. They need to know how to use it and make sure that they keep the protections in place. So we offer legal coaching with every new LLC.
Absolutely.
They get two phone sessions, and then we make sure that if that they have their customer agreement, whatever it is they're selling, service or products, if it's terms and conditions they need or an actual contract, that they have that basic contract in place, so that they've got that foundation in place before we set them out into the world. If to do anything else is a real disservice, and so we have put a lot more value into our package to make sure that they have a better chance of surviving.
There you go. Yep, excellent. And Scott, that goes such a long way when you speak to, one, understanding the value of the advice. And when you spoke of capitalization and you spoke of hobby, the business, you're speaking my language there, brother. MYB knows I've done literally an entire podcast episode around the difference between a business and a hobby. And so that people understand, it's not to put people down or anything like that. It's just that they understand there's a difference between the two in terms of your mindset and how you invest. And for what I do now, I don't get my attorney for $6,000 a year. I'll tell you that. So I wish I did.
We can fix that.
Yeah, definitely. Which leads me to a question: do you work across state lines, or are you pretty much just there in Texas, or?
Yeah, I'm licensed in Oklahoma and Texas. I've got associates licensed in a couple other states. And we are general counsel for companies all over the country. All the work is done here from the mothership in Texas, and so like I have a client in Miami, Florida. I can't go to him and do legal work in Florida. And if he needed someone to go to court, we have to find someone to do that, and then we quarterback it for him.
Sure.
But we have clients. We've had clients as far north and west as Alaska, and north and east as Maine, and then Miami, and then we go all the way down close to the border in Texas. We're all over the place. Yep.
Excellent. Yep. Fantastic. And so, yeah, you're definitely getting some thumbs up and applause here from our live audience, for sure. So shout out to those of you that are on Facebook and those of you that are on Spreaker.com. Our guest today, Scott Reib, Reib Law, America's legal coach, is joining us today. And Scott, as we kind of wrap up, what are some best practices? There are a lot of people now, entrepreneurship and business became the sexy thing. I've always joked here on the podcast that a lot of entrepreneurs are really kind of vigilante entrepreneurs. They, and I use that term because they, during the downturn in 08 and 09, a lot of people were laid off from their jobs. Jobs closed up, and some people decided they were going to start their business and they were going to save the world one EIN number at a time. And so a lot of people got into business, but they didn't really necessarily know what they were doing. They were motivated by the pain of, loss in terms of job loss. And, shows like Shark Tank and those kind of things start coming on TV to where now, people just begin to believe like my idea is going to be the next YouTube or the next Google or the next Tesla or whatever. And I'm just an idea away or a Facebook post share away from becoming Elon Musk, And so if you're sitting down with someone and they've been in business 100 years, Scott, or maybe they're starting up today, what are 2 or 3 best practices that you would share with anybody?
Sure. Yeah, we already talked about one is you have to get that foundation right. The second one is related, is that you have to document everything, and that means you have to use contracts. No handshake deals. Everything has to be written. It's not that hard to make sure that you've got a good contract with people. If you're using vendors, you need to have written agreements. If you have independent contractors in your business, you need to have a written agreement saying out that relationship so there's no confusion later as to whether they were an employee or an independent contractor. You want to make sure all that's very clear. And having those documents, contracts keep honest people honest.
Sure.
So as you start out in business, you may be doing business with people right? You kind of start out with that circle that's closest to you, and so it's the people that know, like, and trust you. And so you're doing business with them, and then you have a disagreement over what said you were going to provide or what they said they were going to pay you, right? So you have a disagreement. Well, now how do you handle that disagreement without calling one or the other of you the L word, a liar?
Right.
Well, the way you do that is you say, I think that you're misremembering, and you go back to a written document where you can show this is what we said.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then your friend can go, oh, you're right, I misremembered. But without that document, it's your memory versus their memory. One of you has to be wrong, and that's just not where you want to be. You need to have a written document, and the best way to do that is to use a legal professional to do it, which would be my second tip, is that you need to have some key advisors if you're going to be in this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
There's 4. One of them, and I sometimes say 5 because you probably should have a business coach, but we'll say 4.
Sure.
One is you need a CPA.
Absolutely.
You need someone to help you understand money. You need to understand how to work your QuickBooks or whatever system you're using, set up your chart of accounts right, manage your cash flow, manage your tax burden, all that stuff. You have to have that. You aren't in business if you don't have someone helping you with that. The second thing is you need to have a banker, not a bank. You need a banking relationship. So you need a banker that you've got on speed dial that has you on their phone, that if you need to write a check tonight that you can't cover, but that you'll be able to cover in the morning.
Yeah.
You need to be able to have that conversation with the banker so you can take advantage of that opportunity and then go, Ron, I know you, I trust you, I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah.
If you can't do that if you just have a bank.
Exactly.
You got to have, right, so you have to have a banker. The next thing you need is an insurance broker. Independent would be best, so that you can have someone look at what you'll sit down with you, discuss your business, understand it, and say, here's the coverages that you should have. And then you can go, okay, I can only afford 1 and 2. That's all right. Now you know what you need. And then as your business grows, you start taking down the rest of them. And as your business changes, because you have a relationship, they're advising you on, hey, now you should have this coverage. Right?
Right.
So you need that person. And then 4th is that you should have an attorney that you have a relationship with, that you've already nailed it down, right? So if it's not through a plan like mine, then you've done some other arrangement where they will take your calls, and you know how much it's going to cost. It's already done, because you don't want to have to go find them when you're in a crisis. This doesn't work right.
Yeah.
Because then you have to, you get on Google, you call your friends, who should I call? They finally give you a name. Then you call to make an appointment. They say, great, well, you can come in next week, and that'll be a $250 consultation fee. And
sure.
You finally get in there. They could tell you, yes, we can help you. Now we need $2,500 retainer.
Yeah.
Well, by that point, it's probably too late. But if it's not, you've been under a lot of stress. Where if you already had that nailed down, then the stress is gone, because you know that you have a resource to get the answer you need. So you need to have those 4 key relationships in place as you start your business. And then I think the last but not least is that you need to be really careful that you aren't using other people's intellectual property to grow your business.
Yes, absolutely.
And where this happens the most is copyright. People are throwing together websites, and they're using what they think are free images because they're on Google. And then there's bots out there that are trolling the internet looking for these images that aren't coded right, that don't have a license, and then suddenly you get a demand letter in the mail from an attorney, and there's statutory penalties for doing that, and there's no way around it, and it's $5,000-$10,000. It's real money, and even if your webmaster did it wrong, you're still responsible. Yeah. So that's really key: is don't use other people's intellectual property. Pay for it. There's really reasonable places on the internet where you can, if you need an image, you can buy it for a few dollars. There are some royalty-free ones. You just want to make sure that if someone's doing it for you, they always have to give you proof that they had permission to use the image, either free or paid for. And then the branding of your business is the second place.
Sure.
You need to make really sure that you're not building your business on someone else's brand. I've seen it too many times where you spend all this money and effort building this, and then you find out 2 or 3 years in that someone else already had your name, and you can't trademark it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have to start over.
Yeah, which is terrible. And I've seen that with my banking background, Scott. I have seen that with customers more times than I ever cared to. It was just by not having, again, the right people on your team. And that's really what you're speaking to, is you have to have a team, Mind Your Business Nation, when you're starting your business, or if you've been in business for some time and your team has evolved, but you've got to make sure you have those key players on your team, as Scott has elaborated. So Scott Reib is our guest today. Reib Law, that's reiblaw.com is where you can go to learn more. And we're going to have Scott's contact information in the show notes. But, Scott, what is the best way for people that are listening to the podcast, if they want to reach out to you? Is your email kind of the best way, or should they call, or what do you recommend?
I think the best way is going to be for them to go to reiblaw.com. That's REIBLAW.com/mindingbusiness.
Okay.
And they'll go to that. There's some good information about me and the firm, and then we have 4 special offers for them so that they can take advantage of those if they just go to reiblaw.com/mindingbusiness. We have a free download there on a white paper about how they can use their emails to form binding contracts. We talked about trying to do that in a simple way. This gives them a real good format to make sure that they've got agreements that are binding and that will keep them out of fights with their friends and customers. And then we have one of our ebooks, have a video masterclass, and we also have information on the access plan.
Oh, excellent. Scott, thank you so much to you and your team for doing that. And I know that Minding Your Business Nation is going to take advantage of that very soon to reach out. And for those that are interested and serious about their business, to reach out to you and considering hiring you. I really appreciate the information that you've delivered today. I think it's going to help a lot of people, including myself, and definitely want to remain in touch with you as we continue to build things and continue to progress forward. So thank you so much for being a guest here on the podcast. Best wishes to you and your family and your team there. And if I can be a resource, certainly feel free to reach out to me, Scott. I really appreciate this.
Thanks, Ron. It's been a blast.
Yep. Excellent. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Scott Reib, America's legal coach. Scott is the official Zig Ziglar small business lawyer, and he's a Ziglar certified legacy trainer. And he just laid a bunch of good nuggets for you guys, as well as for myself, man. So definitely look to take advantage of it. This is about information, right? And this is about ensuring that you've got the right kind of information and, again, the right kind of people on your team as you build. So you may be listening to this and you may be in a situation where you don't necessarily have the budget. Even with what Scott was talking about with the access plan or just hiring an attorney. But I'll tell you this, this thing is still about relationships. And if you build the right kind of relationship, you never know what can happen. And if you plant the right kind of positive seeds, you never know what can happen. So I really strongly encourage you to reach out to Scott. Yes, he's there in Texas, but as he mentioned, he works across state lines and he's all over the country. And you need that kind of partnership and you need that kind of expertise for someone that not only is he an attorney, but he's a business owner and he's been a business owner and he's got marketing expertise as well. And so you got to have these kind of people on your team. Otherwise, you're just a hobby. If you just want to collect rocks, then all you need is a procedure, right? When you start a business, you have to have a process along with your procedure. Okay. And that's going to be a whole nother topic on another podcast. So we thank Scott for joining us. And you can actually connect with him on social media at Scott Reib, SCOTTREIB. Is the way you can connect with him on social media with that brother, man. And then you can go to, again, reiblaw.com, REIBLAW.com/minding business. And that's just for you, minding your business nation. Thank you so much again to Scott Reib. Listen, now we're going to jump into Ron's rundown. Okay, so on Ron's rundown today, I want to jump into a subject that's been crazy on social media, man. And you've had it different legalities going around with Jussie Smollett, who is now the ex-actor from the show Empire that comes on Fox. He's no longer with Empire. I believe everybody's familiar with the scenario, but Jussie had an incident that took place in Chicago where two men apparently robbed him, and there were some racial and homophobic things that were done. And that took social media by storm. And then a couple weeks later, it started to be rumored that maybe that was a hoax and maybe Jussie had lied about the situation. And that's come out, and there's been evidence to suggest that he did lie about the incident that took place in Chicago. And listen, you know, it's been reported ridiculously about all the details. So there's a lot of avenues you can go to get that. And I want to tie in Robert Sylvester Kelly, who's known as R. Kelly. He was brought in on charges, sexual predator charges, and yeah, everybody knows his story, certainly by now, if you've seen the documentary of Surviving R. Kelly and that sort of thing. So you've got that, and then you've got Patriots owner, New England Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, who was brought in on allegations or charges of prostitution and supporting and funding prostitution rings and things like that through the spa and all that. So kind of three distinct legal areas for people with large profiles and who have done well in life on a number of different fronts. But so I'm going to lump them all together, and I want to give you a best practice, MYB, in terms of what to do. So whether you're Jussie Smollett, whether you're R. Kelly, whether you're Robert Kraft, here's the deal. When you're in leadership, you're going to be scrutinized. There's something that my dad taught me a long time ago. Now I'm 38. When I was a boy, my dad told me one time something that has stuck with me throughout my career, business, professional, sports, whatever it is. And it's this: always assume that you're being watched. Now I don't say that, and he wasn't saying that to being that you're worried about big brother government and you're worried about this and that. But just know that when you're in leadership, you're always watched. People they listen to everything that you say. When you're a business owner, and like Scott said, you build your team, and whether you've got employees or not, or however you've got it set up, people are watching what you're doing. Okay. People see what you're doing. When you're on social media, they're reading it, they're sharing it, they're talking about it, they're inboxing. You might post and you may not get a whole lot of likes and shares, right? That doesn't mean people didn't see the post. That just means they didn't like or share it. Okay? So, but that doesn't mean they're not talking about what you said and how you said it or how they think you said it. And social media is difficult because it's hard to get emotion out of social media a lot of times. And so people, unfortunately, tend to take things and they make their own assumptions and whatnot. But either way, my best practice for all of us is, as leaders, as business leaders in your community, with your business, with your nonprofit, just know that you're always being watched. And so if you're a R. Kelly, you're a Jussie Smollett, you're a Robert Kraft, when things come up, just know that those things are going to be investigated. There's a lot of tools out here now. There's cameras, there's witnesses, there's things like that. So it doesn't mean that you have to be pessimistic and scary, right? But as a best practice, you've got to make sure that you've got your everything's buttoned up, you got your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And just know that you're not going to be able to just get away with stuff, all the time. And very rarely nowadays. And so Jussie thought he was going to get away with that lie. I don't know. It's not looking good. Now the evidence may change and things like that. R. Kelly for decades has had this issue. You know what I mean? And it's got to be brought to justice. It's got to be dealt with. Robert Kraft, same way. You got to see what level of involvement he had. And when the details and the facts come out, then we'll be able to see what's what. But to even get into these allegation situations, MYB, you've got to be careful about what you do and what you say. When I'm doing things, I meet with people. I try to have witnesses or a witness. If I'm meeting with the opposite sex, I don't do that with the blinds closed and the door shut and all this kind of stuff away from everybody. And that's more protection for that individual, and it's protection for me, and it's protection for the business. And so, and that's the same way for ladies. Ladies, if you're having to meet with a man, you may want to consider that same as a best practice, because you just don't want to put yourself in a bind and in a tough situation. And so I recommend, in my best practice to you, is to always make sure that you understand that you're always being watched. You're being watched on social media. You're being watched in real life, offline. You're being watched when you speak in meetings, the meetings that you attend, the events that you attend. People are watching, and they're looking and they're scrutinizing, good, bad, or ugly, what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're being told, those sort of things. So again, don't be pessimistic. Just be knowledgeable. And that'll help you get through a lot of situations and help you avoid the Jussie, I guess that's his name, R. Kelly, and the Robert Kraft type scenarios that come up. Same just like when I did the episode on sexual harassment in 2017. It's the same thing. You're being watched. Your behavior is being watched and scrutinized, more so than it ever has. Just be careful out there. Don't be scared, but just be careful. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed today's episode on Tuesday, February the 26th. Came to you on a different day, so I'd throw you a little bit of a curve, but we're always here for you. We'll be back again this coming Friday with our guest for this coming Friday that you really are not going to want to miss. Someone else that you're going to want to have on your team. Okay. Thank you again to Scott Reib for joining. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Facebook Live, all of you commenting, liking, sharing. Thank you so much for your support of the Minding Your Business podcast. Again, we're over 34,000 downloads. Subscribe, like, share all across media, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google, SoundCloud, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the different major channels where you get podcast content. Thank you to everybody at the Binge Podcast Network, to Dominic Lawson, the entire team that works with me there. Thank you. And again, thank you all for liking and sharing this podcast. Leave a positive comment, 5-star positive comment on Apple. That helps us grow the podcast and, again, continue to extend our value. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news, there's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast. Enjoy all that you have planned in positivity for the rest of today, and we will be back with another episode of the podcast. Peace.